The night had been going well. Shuichi left dinner with Kakashi at his side, and they headed to his room. It was the first time that had happened in a while. He'd been staying in Kakashi's room while his mattress aired out, though to anyone who asked, they just liked staying together. It resulted in many sly insinuations that made Shuichi want to crawl in a hole, but he'd rather hear that than have everyone know about Kakashi's accident, so he put up with it. Now he'd finally gotten his bed back to a usable state, and he had something he wished to ask Kakashi.
Alma.
He began as he let Kakashi enter first, shutting the door behind them.
I hope I'm not overstepping any boundaries, but I have a request.
A request he'd had to keep telling himself he could ask. It was fine. The worst that would happen would be for Kakashi to say no. They wouldn't break up over something so silly.
What is it?
Kakashi kicked off his shoes and hopped up on Shuichi's bed without a care. Then, upon hearing the crinkle as he hit the mattress, he sat up and glared.
Actually, Seihara, what is this?
A plastic sheet.
Kakashi's frown made Shuichi wonder if maybe he'd been wrong after all. Maybe this wasn't a good idea.
It's not what you think. I didn't put it on my bed because I thought you might, have an accident. You were fine all those nights we spent in your room.
Right.
Kakashi seemed to calm down a little at that, looking a little more curious now.
Then what's it for? Don't tell me that gave you some weird pee fetish or something.
Shuichi wasn't sure he ever felt as embarrassed in his entire life as he did in that moment.
Actually, I think I might.
For many long moments, the two stared at each other, neither saying a word. Then, Kakashi burst into laughter.
Alma, please. This was very hard for me to admit. I won't ever bring it up again if you are opposed. But I've been thinking about that night a lot, and I'd never felt like that before. It was very enjoyable.
Sorry.
Kakashi did not, in fact, seem very sorry as he wiped tears of laughter from his eyes.
I just didn't expect my beloved Seihara to admit to that so easily. You must have gotten really turned on to be so upfront about it.
I was.
God, how many times had he thought about it when he and Kakashi had been intimate? Every single one? Still, there were some things he just couldn't bring himself to admit, and thinking about his boyfriend witnessing his wet clothes in Shuichi's own lap every single time they started making out was one of them.
Alma, I really want to try something. Anything you are comfortable with or nothing. If you aren't, please don't think you have to just because I.
Shuichi.
Hearing Kakashi say with name with such intensity stopped Shuichi's anxious rambling in its tracks. Kakashi stared at him intently, his face betraying nothing. Then he giggled and grinned wide.
I don't mind. What do you want to do? I'm sure you've been fantasizing. So tell me and we'll do it.
Shuichi swallowed thickly, trying not to look as nervous as he felt. Here he was, given a pass to do whatever he wished with Kakashi, and it was too much. Dozens of fantasies had run through his head. How could he pick one on the spot? Admit that was what he wanted? How could he possibly tell Kakashi he wanted to?
I want us to wet the bed together.
Kakashi's face slowly lost its grin, and for a terrifying moment, Shuichi thought Kakashi was upset. But then he leapt up off the bed and hastily put his shoes on before grabbing Shuichi's hand and leading him out of the room.
We need to get lots to drink if we want to really have to go buy more.
Shuichi could do nothing but nod as he was pulled along.
Then we are going to the kitchen.
Part of him couldn't believe that he was really going to do this. It was so dirty, but he could feel his cock stir in anticipation, and for once, he decided to listen to that head instead. When he cracked open his eyes, the digital clock told Shuichi it was just past 5 in the morning. It was possible someone else could be up at that time, but not many. Kibo, perhaps. Maybe Kaito. Shuichi certainly didn't want to be among them, but his aching bladder didn't really care what he wanted. It wanted relief. Now, Shuichi couldn't remember the last time he'd had to pee so badly. He wasn't one to hold it until the last moment. He moved to get out of bed, when he remembered why he was like that in the first place. His face flushed as he carefully felt the sheets, finding them dry. Kakashi hadn't had an accident, but he knew they still wouldn't be dry for very long.
Alma.
He turned on the lamp and gently shook Kakashi's shoulder until his boyfriend awoke with a displeased groan.
Shuichi Seihara, there'd better be a good reason.
His mumbling cut off as he opened his eyes. Shuichi flushed as Kakashi smirked, presumably because he couldn't stop fidgeting. He had to pee so bad.
Does my beloved Seihara have to go?
Yes.
he admitted easily, too desperate to lie. It wouldn't have helped anyway, not when it was so obvious. Especially as a wave of desperation hit him and he had to grab his crotch. Not yet, he thought.
Are you?
Absolutely.
Kakashi giggled and threw back the blanket.
But I have a request.
Anything.
That was potentially a dangerous thing to say, but there was no denying that he trusted Kakashi more than anyone else did.
Excellent.
Kakashi clapped his hands together, an excited shine to his eyes. Shuichi expected his request had to do with their bladders, so he was a bit taken aback when Kakashi quickly spit out his question.
Can we use our first names when we're alone?
Oh, that wasn't what he'd expected at all. It made Shuichi's heart beat a little faster to think they'd gotten to that point in their relationship, but they hadn't they? So he smiled as softly as he could manage despite how painful his situation was, not wanting Kakashi to have any doubts about his answer.
Of course, Kakashi, that's perfectly acceptable.
Despite it being his idea, Kakashi seemed a little flustered.
So, how do you want to do this? This is your fantasy, so you should get to choose.
Shuichi didn't comment on his quick change of subject. He had no intentions of embarrassing Kakashi. Now that they were back to the pressing matter at hand, Shuichi felt the awkwardness creep up on him. Wasn't it enough that this was all happening because of him? Couldn't Kakashi just take it from there? But no, Kakashi was right. This was his fantasy, and surely Kakashi was taking pleasure just from the fact that he didn't know what was going to happen. Shuichi didn't want to let him down, and truly, he had to pee far too much for his embarrassment to stop him.
We should lie back down, and you can press against me so I can feel it.
Kakashi hummed thoughtfully and nodded, lying down. Shuichi followed suit, anticipation coursing through him. He couldn't remember having accidents as a child, and yet there he was, about to deliberately pee in his bed while still wearing his pajamas. It was exciting.
Does Sashi want to watch?
He nodded, biting his bottom lip gently as he tried not to squirm too much. God, he wanted nothing more than to see Kakashi pee himself again.
Okay, but don't feel like you need to wait for me to finish if you really have to go. We don't want your bladder to pop.
Shuichi wasn't sure such a thing was possible, but he didn't have time to worry about it. A warm damp spot was suddenly on his leg. Kakashi giggled and shot him a coy smile. That was all the warning he got before Kakashi let go completely, and a steady stream gushed onto him, wetting his thigh with hot piss straight from his boyfriend's dick. He had all he could do to not lose it right there. Kakashi's pee spread down his pant leg, making him grow partially erect despite his own desperate need.
It feels so good. Does my beloved Shuichi feel good?
Kakashi murmured, nuzzling his face against Shuichi's neck, laying a soft kiss there. Oh God, did he?
Yes. Oh God, Kakashi, it feels amazing.
He groaned, his breath growing shallow as Kakashi finished with a relieved sigh. Shuichi couldn't stop himself from turning on his side, lining up their bodies so they were pressed flush together at the groin. Kakashi buried his face in Shuichi's shoulder and shivered as Shuichi had no choice but to give in and let all of the piss in him come bursting out. He brought his arms up and held Kakashi tightly, reveling in the sensation of peeing in such a foreign location. He'd never even really peed against trees in the woods, let alone in bed, positioned directly over his boyfriend's cock. His boyfriend's cock that was growing erect as he pissed against it.
Shuichi, I hope you're planning on taking responsibility for this.
He whined, pressing their clothed cocks even closer together. His bladder emptied at a quick rate, soaking them both and leaving them grinding against each other until he trickled to a stop. He shivered with relief as he finished, ignoring the wet sheets as he pulled away from Kakashi to hastily start shedding his clothing. Kakashi lay there for a moment, looking dazed, before he sat up and did the same. As he strived, Shuichi took the opportunity to take in his boyfriend's small, naked body, with all of that deliciously soft, pale skin. When they were both devoid of any barriers, their bodies melded back together, kissing and touching each other in a desperate fashion. He pulled away from his boyfriend's chest, only to scoot back and resume his trail of kisses up Kakashi's inner thigh and around his erection. All the while, Kakashi whined for him to stop teasing. Shuichi almost continued merely out of principle, Kakashi telling him not to tease, but he couldn't deny that he wanted release just as badly as Kakashi did. So he quickly took Kakashi into his mouth before he could think about the drying piss on Kakashi's skin. Sure enough, it didn't taste particularly pleasant, but Kakashi was flushed and panting and just so cute that he didn't care. He might not have been a pro at sucking cock like Kakashi was, he honestly didn't think his boyfriend had a gag reflex, but he thought he'd gotten pretty good at it, especially if Kakashi turning into a moaning mess above him is any indication. He reached between his legs and pumped his own erection as he sucked off Kakashi. Every moan that left his boyfriend's lips spurred him on, and he soon came onto the wet bed sheets, groaning loudly around Kakashi's cock. Kakashi soon muttered out a warning, but Shuuchi ignored it, licking and sucking until Kakashi came in his mouth. This time, rather than cry out Shuuchi's name as he tended to do when he came, the words Shuuchi had longed to someday hear from Kakashi spilled from his lips. He hadn't expected to hear them so soon, but he couldn't deny how thrilled they made him. Kakashi, blushing more now than Shuuchi had ever seen him before, flung a hand to his mouth as he realized what he'd just said.